We'll call the meeting to order and welcome everybody to tonight's regular board meeting for the School District of Amery. I'm pulling out my phone because it is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and I thought it might be appropriate to start. Dr. King, as the country remembers him today, there was a quote that he had, and it was actually posted by the WASB today, and I thought it would be appropriate to start out. It just said, "Intelligence plus character, that is the true goal of education." And I think as we look at our schools, that's really what we're emphasizing constantly. It's not just the intelligence, it's both parts. So just thought that was appropriate as we get going here today. So with that in mind, we can start with our Spotlight on Education.
Mrs. Meyer, if you would introduce our guests.
I would be happy to. We have Mrs. Kennedy here with some of her children. Mrs. Kennedy is one of our innovative program teachers at the elementary school. Her classroom is a multi-age first and second grade project-based learning environment, and her students are very excited to share with you a little bit about their program. And boys and girls, it would be great if you would introduce yourself sometime, either before or after.
Do you want to get him to go to the stand right
Didn't you guys want to scooch around, or are you good there?
Do you want to put your hair on? We don't have a portable one.
No, not really. Yep, you just got to talk right up on top of it. Just like this.
Hi, my name is Dylan. My name is Larson. My name is Jeff.
My name is Mrs. Kennedy.
My name is Krista. My name is Caitlin. My name is Shanna. My name is Allison. And my name is Zach.
So we're going to talk a little bit this evening about project-based learning and 3 different types of project-based learning that our students are engaged in our classroom. We have a multi-age project-based first and second grade, and this is the second year of multi-age, and we use a variety of project-based learning approaches because it's a well-rounded approach to inquiry. All of these 3 methods are founded in inquiry, and I'll talk a little bit about that in just a moment. Students in our program are solving real-world problems. They investigate open-ended questions that they often come up with themselves. The learning is authentic, and then they give presentations and they share what they've learned with the world. The first is an inquiry-based learning. It's a process through which questions are generated and students explore these in-depth questions and gain great knowledge. This type of learning not only is authentic, but it's often intrinsically motivated. So it builds from one student to the next. When they think they figured out the answer to one thing, they often come up with about 20 other questions during the process of learning. Some of these projects that we've done using the inquiry method include simple machines, and so at this time I'm going to pass over the mic to my friends Dylan and Lars to talk a little bit about our simple machine program project.
We did a project with simple machines, and it used Rube Goldberg machines, and we used different simple machines to get a marble into a cup, and the project involved having 4 chain reactions and 2 simple machines. That's what there had to be. And the energy that they have is the grams and newtons, which the more you pull on it, the more the grams and newtons go up. machines.
Explain the 6 machines that you have.
The 6 different simple machines were the wedge, wheel and axle, pulley, lever, and inclined plane. And here is the lever.
I know. Are there any in the front that
This is the pulley that we use, and it had this, and the pulley had this, so how it put this on it, and there was a water bottle attached to this, and we were pulling it up, and we were seeing which had more newtons, the double pulley or the single pulley, and the single pulley had more newtons than grams.
And what are the newtons? What did we discover newtons were?
Newtons are how much power you use. That's what we put into it.
Thank you, gentlemen. Nice job, guys.
Awesome.
Another one of our inquiry-based learning projects and activities is something that we do daily, and that's called our Reader's Workshop. So not only are we using projects throughout the day, we incorporate that learning style of inquiry into our reading as well. And here to talk about our Reader's Workshop is Bryn and Shanna.
We are going to be doing a presentation about Reader's Workshop. We took one part of what Mrs. Kennedy taught us and turned it into a presentation. And we did it with sticky notes. We put NL on one for learning. We put a question mark, another one for questions. And we wrote our new learning down on one of the sticky notes that had NL, and we wrote questions that we had down on the other one that had the question mark. We have an iMovie at the end if you want to watch it. Thank you for listening.
Another form of project-based learning is our problem-based learning, where students identify a problem that they'd like to solve. And not only is this an independent, but we often do this as a whole class. So one of the problem-based learning projects that we've done was our lap blanket project. And here to introduce and share a little bit about that is Zach.
Hi, my name is Zach, and we created lap blankets. We cut, measured, and tied. We gave them to the fire department. So whoever's house got burned down, the fire department could give them to them. And and I got some QR codes how we made the blankets, and I got iMovie at the end.
Awesome. Do you want to pass those out and you'll share a little bit about that process? So while we were making our lap blankets, we used a variety of collaborative groups. Zach was busy not only helping with each of those groups, but he was also recording. He was taking video, he was taking pictures, and he himself came up with the idea of turning it into an iMovie to share with families as they receive our blankets. So this QR code and our class picture ended up on each blanket that was donated to the fire department. Their goal, the class goal, was to raise enough money to purchase material for 10 lap blankets. And in fact, because we have such amazing parents in our classroom, we were able to make 12 lap blankets, and they donated those to the fire department. And called and invited the mayor, and called and invited the newspaper as well, and many of our school board members here too. Feel free, that just takes a regular QR reader, and again, we are incredibly proud of all of our students here. So this is Zach. Thank you very much, Zach. The third and final project-based approach that I'm going to speak about is our passion-based learning. So this is where students are applying the inquiry process about a topic that they're passionate about. This often takes the form in other districts. It might look like a genius hour. In our classroom, every hour is genius hour. And every one of them is an absolute genius. So this is something that they really look forward to every single day. They're building their passions, they're expanding on the questions that they have, problems that they want to solve, but these are mainly independent and small group activity projects that they've created completely themselves. Here to talk a little bit about their project for the passion-based learning is Allie.
Hi, my name is Allie, and I'm going to tell you 10 facts of the sun. The sun is the hottest star in the world. Did you know that the sun is a star? It lights and heats our whole solar system. 9 different planets, including Earth. The sun looks bigger because it's closer to us. In fact, the sun is in the center of the solar system. A sun's gravity can pull stuff. The sun's gravity keeps the solar system together. The sun is 600 times bigger than other planets. The sun is all important to life on Earth.
Nice job, Allie. Thank you. Another one of our Genius presentations, I'd like to introduce Caitlin and Krista.
We had a wonder on magic, and we are going to tell you 5 different facts. First, magic was invented by the ancient Egyptians. They performed for queens and kings. The Egyptians had a queen she made it look like she could harness the sun, and the Egyptians thought that was magic. The best magician is Harry Houdini. Harry Houdini made an elephant disappear. That was one of the best magic tricks ever done.
Thank you very much. So this is just a small sampling of the amazing things that are going on in our project-based classroom using inquiry as the foundation for all of our different approaches to project-based learning. By remaining founded in inquiry, we make sure that we are reaching our standards base. We are making sure that we're staying true to being student-centered, and that everything is authentic in our classroom. Thank you very much for your time. And at this time, we say,
Thank you for listening to our presentation.
if you have any questions or comments, they love answering questions and comments.
What's your next inquiry? Anybody got it?
Well, we're excited to see what you do come back with.
Sounds good. We have a few things in the works. We are currently working with Farm Table to build a project around endangered animals in western Wisconsin.
Awesome.
So we haven't launched that officially yet, but we've inquired with Farm Table and they've come and visited our classroom.
You guys did an awesome job. Go ahead.
Oh, I just was wondering about your visits to Amery Memory Care. I read about that in the paper as well. What do you do there?
About what we do. We come up with something to do there other than just read. Last time we went and we taught them about simple machines.
Awesome.
It's one of our partnerships that every month we go when we visit the Amery Memory Care, and like Allie mentioned, they come up with the activity that we would like to share with the residents there. So sometimes we go in and we teach them something, and sometimes we go in and we show off.
That's good too.
Ladies and gentlemen, take volunteers.
You guys were awesome. You should be very proud of
Yes.
yourself.
Wonderful.
Because we're very proud of you. Good job. Alrighty. You're welcome to stay, but trust me, most of us would rather leave. We do not take offense. All right, we can just keep rolling along here. Consent agenda items for the night. Who had the vouchers?
Chelsea.
Oh, I had the vouchers, and I guess before I make a motion to approve them, I did have a question on one of them. There was no explanation. It was a purchase of a Kia car over in Bloomington for, I don't know, $11,000, $12,000. I just was wondering what that was about.
Well, there's a van that was purchased, and that's a replacement van for a vehicle for hauling hockey equipment.
Oh, that's the one that
Okay.
crashed.
Oh.
Oh,
that got
sure. I was
totaled.
just, like I said, I didn't see a trade-in
Good
or
call.
anything like that, so I was just kind of curious.
I saw the end result of that one.
So it wasn't good. All right. Okay, well, I'll make a motion to approve the board vouchers.
I'll second.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Anybody sign up for community comments?
Yeah, sure.
Great, then we'll just move on to our administrator reports.
Okay, I'll defer to our building principals first.
Sure. I just have a couple of things. One is in my notes to you, I put that Sven Sundgaard had come last Friday. Well, he ended up not being able to come due to the weather, but he is going to come this Friday, the 19th, and present to our 4th and 5th graders about his love for science and how that drove him into meteorology. So we're excited. He still is going to come. And then just the second thing I would say, we just finished up Peter Pan, and that was Prairie Fire Children's Theater. They come once a year. It was fabulous. I think the intermediate school had about 75% of the roles in the play. There were 80 kids, and I think 56 of them were from the intermediate school, but they had a blast, and what a great program. And
And you made it through the snow
They
mishap
did.
too, huh?
we made it.
Snow in the cold, but they had a full house.
Yeah, so excellent opportunity for them.
Great.
I just want to touch base with what we did today. Staff were really, really busy and in service. At the middle school, we had an awesome day. We spent majority of the day breaking down data. A lot of the data that we talked about going through our school report card that we mentioned last month. And then we did a data retreat district-wide where you had select teachers that were going through the data and breaking it down. But our team really felt strong that it was important to bring that back and give every teacher in the middle school a crack at breaking into all the data and working on improvement goals, buying in and saying, hey, this is what I think will make a difference. And then the team's going to take their input and then write down some specific action steps and then come back. So that today was a really outstanding day. I was really proud of all our leaders and how that went. And I know that same process was replicated in a lot of the buildings, so it wasn't just at the middle school. And a couple other things, we broke out and worked with our staff on Genius Hour, and it was kind of mentioned Genius Hour is another project-based learning method that's going to be worked on in the middle school. We kicked that off on Friday, and so we'll bring you more information as that gets forward. Then we have other things like Quiz Bowl that are starting this week for 6th grade, and that's a 6-week-long program. It's pretty fun. So a lot of things going on.
February 13th is freshman registration. That's where 8th graders begin the process of picking out their courses for freshman year and get to learn about all the offerings that we have in high school. And second, February 27th is ACT Day statewide for all juniors. ACT Work Keys is the following day, the 28th, and we've already started our test prep on that. We established our test prep groups today, and we actually start test prepping on the 29th of January and hoping to replicate our good results from last February.
Right down the line here. Thank you. As Tom mentioned, the day today was just phenomenal, giving our staff the opportunity to meet together, to look at data, to replicate what we did at the data retreat. I think sometimes parents are like, another day off? This is a very much needed day and very well used by our staff. We also continued our work with professional learning communities, so staff were able to sit down, look at the data, look at interventions, what individual interventions we're going to implement to help our students make gains in their learning. So it was a fabulous day. So thank you I know it's hard to add those extra days in the calendar, but we really appreciate it. And this Thursday, we are kicking off our annual reading incentive program. Pete the Cat is the big person on board this year. He's going to be the theme for our reading incentive program. So the kids will learn about the program, and then this coming Monday, the 22nd, a week from tonight, we will have a family celebration where families will come in and their kids will have blankets and pajamas on, and we'll split them up, and they'll be read to by staff in our school and some guest readers also, and they will be introduced or reintroduced to Pete the Cat. He's a pretty favorite person in our school. So, thank you.
I'd just like to share, every year our high school teachers do what's called a post-secondary outcome survey. And we've done that for about, I'm going to say 15 or more years. Schools are required to do it every 5 years, but our district has done it every year. We get phenomenal information from that. We were just recently awarded $11,000 for our post-secondary outcome survey information and how we provided that information to the state. So that will be going into the general fund. So wanted to share that.
Just a couple of points that I'd like to make is that we received aid projections from our Baird consultant, and it looks like the early aid projections for January for next year will be a significant increase, and so that's a great thing because the more aid we receive, that offsets taxes somewhat. I just want to mention, too, I was able to talk to all of our staff in their meetings briefly today and just mention there's been debate and discussion about taxes, and I just wanted to say, in talking with the City of Amery and Town of Lincoln assessor, talking with our consultant from Baird, and conversations with people in the community, some taxes have gone up and some have gone down, but in fact, the school has no control over equalized or assessed value. The mill rate is 11.14, which is lower than it was last year at 11.18. So I wanted just to make that point. And we are setting up a compensation committee for teachers to look at compensation as we move toward next school year. And last thing I want to mention, I was cued in by Ms. Sickink about a safe deposit box in Bremer Bank where there were different titles and deeds and information. A quitclaim deed that was given to the city for Soldiers Field for $1 back in the 70s or 80s. And as I went through this safe deposit box, I found documents from 1950s, from the early 1900s, from 1887. There were several documents, and the earliest document I found was an 1856 school district document. So all kinds of deeds and titles that are in that safe deposit box.
None of them had extra money with them, did they?
No, there were some expired CDs that had been cashed out for scholarships.
Just checking.
Very interesting, though, on onion skin paper and the old materials seen there. So that's all I have.
Okay. Any other questions?
I wonder if preserving some of that. Seriously, at least if nothing else for the history.
There's some great historical artifacts in that safe deposit box.
Who's in charge of the Historical Society here down in the basement of the library? Does anybody know? Is it Jerry? Yeah, you might want to give Jerry Sondriel a call and see if they've got any interest in preserving that sort of stuff that we wouldn't need anymore.
There was one more item I have right in front of me I forgot to mention. There was a donation, thanks, that was given to the school district. Josh Ganji informed us that the Amery Hardware Hank made a donation of $3,402 worth of miscellaneous hardware to the tech ed department. So Todd from Hardware Hank, we wanted to thank him, was not interested in coming to a board meeting or for recognition, but we want to send our thank you to Hardware Hank and Todd for that generous donation.
Great. Thank you. Okay, good. All right, Mr. Sherwood is here to give us an audit review. It's our annual Christmas card from from Clifton.
Skip Bill.
Huh?
Skip Bill.
Oh, wait. Okay.
Not yet. Hold off.
No, we'll get Bill so you don't have to stay here if you don't want. Well, and I did want to mention that when it gets this cold, they talk about things freezing over. Right? So there's two things that have come out of it freezing over. The first one is that Bill's wearing purple and gold. and the Vikings could be going, yeah. So that's the first thing. And the second one is that he's retiring, which I didn't think would happen until things froze over. So
I know that Mr. Johnson has said, I hope, Billy, in my lifetime, I see that the Vikings win the Super Bowl.
I didn't say that, but I
yourself.
was hoping it would be like when you're like 80, 85.
It could very well happen then. It might not happen now.
Well, we didn't get a chance. We've got lots of time to say goodbye, but I just want to initially just tell you to thank you, at least on behalf of myself, and I think I can speak for the board for your years of service, and we are going to miss you.
Thank you very much. And I'll miss this place, too. So thank you for that. You get me all flustered and emotional now, but I am here tonight to give you a brief report on our transportation department. I'll give you some data from last year and also hopefully provide you with some information that maybe you don't know and the public does not know. First off, a department can't run without good staff, and I've got great staff over at the bus garage. My bus drivers, my van drivers, our district mechanic who is new this year, Tom Olson, Chuck Berry also work over there. I can't tell you enough how proud I am of them and the job that they do. School bus driving is an extremely difficult job. They have to drive safely, first and foremost, drive safely. Then when you factor in weather conditions, distractions in the school bus, it makes it quite tough, but I'm very proud of them. My bus drivers and van drivers are generally the first to see the children in the morning, so they kind of set the tone on how their day is going to go. So I believe that my drivers are all cordial to the kids, greet them good morning, can see if somebody's having a bad day, and then either alert me or the other buildings and just find out maybe something's going on and check on them. So they do a great job. Past few weeks, we've been driving in a little bit more snow and very frigid temperatures, and they're driving around in a big tin can, so they don't heat the best, and then they're constantly opening and shutting the doors when the students are getting on and off. So it's also very uncomfortable for the drivers this time of the year. Drivers are expected to maintain discipline on the school bus, but they're doing that with their back to all the children, and there's 60, 70 kids on these school buses. They don't always see or hear what's going on in the back of the bus. I know I've driven many times, and I'm sure that there's things that I have missed as well. But I believe that they are doing the best job that they can do. This past fall, several drivers and myself, we did attend a workshop in service up at CISA 11 regarding how to manage student behavior on the school bus. The main message I got out of it is to develop a relationship with the children. Like I said, you can see if somebody's having a bad day. You can separate them, move them to a different seat, and it should alleviate, or hopefully does alleviate, a lot of discipline problems. Some of my drivers have been with me a long time. I do have one driver who has been with me for, she started in '87, so that's 30 years. And then I've also got some new drivers. So the new ones try and glean as much information from the veteran drivers as they possibly can. Nationwide, it is very tough to find school bus drivers. I know that you've seen the advertisements and the inquiries. How do we find more drivers? And unfortunately, our district is one that has a hard time getting drivers. That's why I'm behind the wheel quite often, and some of our other staff there. So if anyone is interested in becoming a bus driver, please give me a call. And it is a fun job. It's really cool coming and seeing the children here, showing off what they do learn in school. And my drivers do come back with some great stories regarding the kids that are on their bus. This year we do have a new mechanic that joined us this past September. His name is Andy Johnson. He's taking over that position from Tom Olson, who has transitioned to the full-time grounds, transportation, buildings person. And Tom has been very instrumental in helping Andy learn school buses. But Andy comes with a lot of experience. So like I said, he's doing a great job. We do have several special ed van routes that do transport students to and from school. So my van drivers, they're included with my school bus drivers. They're the first ones to see the kids, and they do a great job. Our school district currently has 14 morning and afternoon bus routes. The average bus route has about 90 students scheduled to ride the bus. The reason there's so many on there is I assign every student in the school a seat in the school bus in case they do need to ride. But many families choose to transport their own children, and you can see that with the traffic pattern that happens here in the morning and in the afternoon. The capacity on the school bus is between 76 and 78 passengers, and I've never had to bring another bus to a bus route that is overloaded or has reached capacity. The school district does receive some funding from the state of Wisconsin for students that ride the bus either to or from school at least once. So I try and encourage all the families in our district to please have their child ride the school bus at least once throughout the year. All of the bus routes are very full. but I've got them all designed so they don't become really full, uncomfortably full until they get into town. So it's only for a couple blocks, a few minutes that they are 3 in a seat most of the way back. Last year, our school buses traveled almost 200,000 miles and used 29,500 gallons of fuel. I looked back through my records to see how that compared to past years, and in 2003, 2004, our school buses traveled 260,000 miles that year and used over 34,000 gallons of fuel. Back in 03 and 04, we had 20 school bus routes, so through the years, I've been able to eliminate some bus routes, and those students have been absorbed onto other bus routes. The downfall to this is some of our ridership time is a little bit longer for our kids, but through budget cuts, through lack of drivers, we've just had to do things this way. Our average age of our school bus fleet is about 10 years old. We have gotten several new buses in the last few years, so that average age is going down. And the average mileage on our school buses is about 136,000 miles. Each year, the Wisconsin State Patrol does come to the bus garage and does an annual inspection. Typically, that happens in February, so we look forward to seeing our friends from the State Patrol here in a couple weeks. We do maintain and repair what we can on site. However, sometimes we do have to take the buses to a Cummins or a Caterpillar dealer for an engine issue where either we don't have the expertise or we don't have the proper tools to repair those. Our district vans are used to transport special ed students. They're also used for athletic events, field trips, and also for staff travel for workshops and in-services. So last year, our vans traveled over 138,000 miles and used almost 7,500 gallons of fuel. Earlier, I had talked about how difficult it can be to be a school bus driver regarding student discipline. The majority of our children are very well behaved, but there are some times where kids make a bad choice that we try to keep to a minimum. At the beginning of the school year, Mrs. Meyer and Ms. Schock have me to their buildings, and this year I had several drivers that did volunteer their time, and they helped me with teaching the children expected behavior on the school bus, safety rules for a child that needs to cross the road to get off the school bus or get on, how to wait for the bus driver's hand signal to wave them across, how to sit properly in the school bus. You know, we all know that school buses don't have seat belts, but they do have the high padded seats, so we want them to stay seated, facing forward. That happens most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time. So, like I said, it's kind of fun going to each of those buildings and working with those younger kids. You know, we've got 4-year-old children that are getting on and off the school bus. They're not very tall. You can't see them in those high back seats. So it's very important that they do know the safety rules. I think Cheryl's got some pictures up on the screen. Mr. Kukta helped me with this here the other day. In the afternoons, not all of our school buses go to each building, so we've got buses that pick up at the intermediate school, the middle school, and at the high school. And now we do our end of the day transfer at the elementary school, which has worked out wonderfully. Last year we did that at the high school, where last year the elementary kids would get on transfer buses and then get on their home bus to go home. Well, sometimes that created a lot of confusion. A young 4-year-old, 5-year-old child doesn't always know which bus that they're supposed to be on. So now they're in their correct bus lines at the elementary school, and they get on their own home bus right from there. The bus drivers are happier. They're able to be a little more sure on who they have. Sometimes we do have to wait hold up the traffic at the end of the day to get a child from the back of the line to the front of the line. But I think things are working out very well. We have tweaked some things throughout the year, but things are running like a clock now. We've got great communication between all the buildings and the school buses. Our radio system has been upgraded a little bit. We had an amplifier that did go out, but now we're back running full steam with that. So we've got great communication. So you can see up here, this is the end of the day. Their buses are all lined up at the elementary school. They start leaving their other buildings at 3:17, and by the time this last bus gets parked up here, it's 3:22. That last bus radios into the elementary school. It says we're all parked, and then they start their transfer of middle school, intermediate school, and high school. Elementary kids come out, and we get them all on their home bus to go home, and this bus starts leaving at about 3:25, 3:26. So that's 3 to 4 minutes that it takes to get everybody loaded. So we're very efficient as far as time there. So this is a glimpse at what the transportation department looks like. If you would like some more information, more detailed information, please reach out to me at the bus garage. I'd be more than happy to provide that to you. Any questions for me tonight?
I don't think so. Very good.
Can I do the skull? Oh, there's another Viking fan back there.
Oh, look at you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. See you, Bill.
All righty. Great. Now, Mr. Sherwood.
Without any further ado, now time for the real fun stuff. Right? All right. So those that don't know me, my name is Jonathan Sherwood. I'm a manager with the auditing firm Clifton Larson Allen. I've been involved in the district's audit now for 7-8 years, and most recently for the last probably 4 to 5 years have been in charging or managing field work out here. So pretty familiar with the district and kind of the different years that have gone by, so I can kind of have some insight over historical trends as well. So if there's anything that comes up, by all means let me know. I can do my best to answer some questions off the cuff if I can. So to get you started, I'm going to spare you the fun and excitement of reading the entire audit report. There's just a 2-page handout, which I'll be going over right now. But again, if there's anything specific that we can refer back to the statements, I do have the audit report with us as well. To start you off, we do have we issue an auditor's report with the financial statements every year. We've issued an unmodified opinion, which I refer to as a clean opinion. That's the goal of our audit. That's the goal of the district as well. DPI won't accept anything less than an unmodified opinion, so we're in good standings with DPI as well. I do want to highlight right away there for you, there were 2 new GASB reporting standards or accounting standards that we adopted during the year. It's GASB 73 and 75, and they have to deal with the way that the district has to report the supplemental pension plan as well as the other post-employment benefits that are offered by the district. They do not impact the fund statements, so the funds where you are adopting budgets and reviewing on a day-to-day basis, but they do impact the entity-wide or governmental statements as a whole, so you'll see some drastic changes to the audit report this year. There are 2 other reports that we're required to file as well, one for DPI being the 1506 AC from an audit standpoint. We do issue that or submit that report to DPI by their December 1st deadline every year. And then the other one is a data collection form, which is required for the federal government, and that is required because the school district receives over a certain dollar threshold of federal funding. Which also then prompts what we refer to as a single audit or an internal control over compliance audit. So we do quite a few things here for the district while we're out here for our short visit. And I'm happy to report that, I say it this way because I am happy to report that we're only reporting 3 of our typical material weaknesses. I say it that way because they are typical, routine. I see this on the vast majority of the school districts that we do audit. The big three that we typically see are material weaknesses 1 and 2 that you see, limited segregations of duties, material audit adjustments, and then the third one, which you do not see here, which we were able to remove during the year, was the financial statement drafting, which is performed by us as part of the audit standards or audit steps that we do. But due to the district staff that we have, we as an audit firm felt very comfortable being able to remove that, so we can show the differences of taking your fund statements and then drafting this up into our big audit report. More than competent with the district staff that they're able to understand the steps that we do in order to get to our audit report. So as part of the compliance audit that we do, referring back to that single audit report, we do take a look at all of the federal and state programs that receive funding here at the district. And there were no compliance findings that we needed to report. So everything met the federal and state standards. So one of those programs is the transportation program, which you just heard a little bit about. So we do audit on a rotating basis. We look at the ridership, making sure that the transportation supervisor has the correct mileage and those types of things we do review routinely as well. So again, throughout the whole process, I do want to thank Twyla and the rest of the district office staff for the work that they do to pull all of our pesky audit requests there at the end of the fiscal year. So responding back to general inquiries and dealing with us for a quick turnaround that we need to have to meet DPI's deadline. So thank you to the staff there of dealing with us when we're out here. Now just to quickly jump into right away the performance here of the rest of the general fund and going through all the rest of the funds of the district. About halfway down on that page 1 there, you can see the general fund and the general fund balance sheet summary. Just highlight, this gives you a good trend analysis or be able to spot things out from year to year. One factor that we always like to look at from an audit standpoint is where is cash balance. How likely is the district to meet their general vouchers that need to get paid, just general cash flow of the district. And from 2016 and then into 2017, that increased, which is a positive financial result. So that's something that we like to pay attention to and highlight. So that is a positive thing that occurred during the year. And then compare that to also partway down under the payables and other accruals line that did decrease as well. So we had less bills that were outstanding at the end of the year. So the combination of those are some very positive things to highlight for you. You do report under the fund balance section there. There's a shaded cell there saying unassigned fund balance. You do also report some assigned fund balance. And just to remind you where that assignment is coming from, that is that CTE program, the Tech Ed grant-related funding. Technically, that does not need to be set aside specifically for those programs, but the district has made the decision to, whatever those reserves are, whatever the leftovers or surplus is at the end of the year, you assign them for those specific programs. So from 2016, that was the inception, 2015, that was the inception of those grants, those programs started. We had an increase in 2016, and then we just had some spend down in 2017. So that then highlights the last type of fund balance that's available to the general fund, which is the unassigned fund balance. You're sitting at about $3.1 million in unassigned fund balance, and it was actually for the financial performance of the year, it did decrease by about $11,941 overall. So we did dip into fund balance just a little bit during the year. And then the other performance measure that you can see there is the other highlighted row or shaded row of percent of unassigned fund balance to the general fund expenditures. That percentage is at 16.3%, and the district does have a fund balance policy that they adopted going back a number of years now. That balance, according to the fund balance policy, should equal to be 5% of general fund expenditures or more. We do have a district benchmark that our firm is able to pull together of 32 school districts in the surrounding area. So we do quite a few school districts around this part of the state. And on average, that percentage that you're seeing there is at 26.9% in average of all those 32 school districts. So the general rule of thumb that we kind of is a good benchmark that we pretty much recommend to districts is they should have typically between 25 and 33% of general fund expenditures, which equates to about 3 to 4 months of general operating expenditures. So the district policy of 5% is pretty lean, in our opinion, and we recommend the 25 to 33%. And the reason that we kind of landed on that is, again, it's pretty industry standard that we see in our area. And then we've heard back from other outside agencies like bonding agencies and that type of thing, and they really look for a decent unassigned fund balance amount when it comes to bond ratings and having favorable interest rates come back for that. Other things that would be a benefit to increasing that amount would be increased cash flow. So it would reduce the need potentially for short-term borrowing. The district here hasn't needed to dip into short-term borrowing for a few years, which is good. So you're preventing yourselves from needing to do that. And then also it does other financing options if there's any long-term capital planning, some capital projects that would be coming up. You could basically self-fund a portion of those projects and not need to go out for bonding for the entire amount. And then lastly, the other thing that a increased unassigned fund balance would allow you to do or have available to you would be some emergency reserves. If there's any major capital items, brand new bus that you might need to purchase, that could come directly out of fund balance versus, again, going out and having to finance that purchase. So that pretty much concludes the general fund. So we can switch down to page 2 for you. And this is going to highlight the special revenue funds of the district. And these are just the fund balances from year to year, so you can kind of see the trend, if one of them's increased or decreased from the prior year. You can see the Educational Trust Fund, or Fund 21, that decreased slightly. The overall health of that fund, though, is pretty positive. There isn't any concern with your Education Trust Fund. Your Food Service Fund, or Fund 50, had positive results during the current year. When it comes to these funds, if it increased, great. If it decreased by a little bit, okay, what are the reasons for it? So your Food Service Fund is operating extremely well. Your Community Service Funds, that's all of your 80 funds that are within the district. That is a negative 15,123 there. That's primarily due to the daycare functions of that, those daycare activities. That was a negative balance of 23,305 for the year. That fund about broke even for the year. So during 2016, they had pretty much a large drop in fund balance. And I think that the reason for that was there was an increase in service that was offered during 2016. So then during 2017, with the increased of services that were there, the expenditures were still up to the 16 amounts, but then the revenues came to kind of basically, like I said, break even by about a few $100 loss that you're seeing there. The rest of the community service agency funds, community ed and the community theater both had positive results for the year. So again, if we're making money, I have no comments to really say for you. They're of no concern to me at this point. Item number 4 for you is the debt service funds. They're used to account and basically track all of your debt service payments for the year. You can see that you did have a significant drop in debt service funds. Part of that is because the district did have what was referred to as a defeasance, or a prepayment of debt that took place during 2017. There was $497,000 of cash on hand that was used to prepay debt, which then resulted in significant interest savings over the course of those bonds. So that is one of the reasons why it's a drastic decrease, because we used up some of the resources there. The reason that you have leftover fund balance sitting there, it's a buildup of tax levy and other sources, interest and things like that go along with those, and then debt premiums as well that occurred for when the debt was initiated. So those reserves are basically set aside there, and they're used to meet future debt service payments that are required. The next box that we have down there is the Long-Term Capital Projects Fund. You have a fund balance there of $500. That's a brand new fund that was started during the year. Any funds that go into there are going to be DPI restricted for a number of years, so they have to be set aside there and can't be touched for a number of years under DPI's regulations. So that fund was just started during 17, and you can look to fund that further in the coming years. The next section there for you is the long-term obligations. So this lays out all the long-term obligations for the district. The ones that you can really highlight right away and see that there is a positive improvement there are the general obligation bonds. Again, those decreased by $497,000 right off the bat due to the defeasance, as well as just the general debt payments that are required during the year. The other ones decreased as according to the repayment schedules. And I'll draw attention to a few other lines here. Capital leases increased just a little bit over the year. And that was due to a brand new capital lease for either Microsoft Service tablets or iPads. I don't recall which off the top of my head, but there was a brand new capital lease for those. And then the other ones that you're going to see kind of jumped significantly are the supplemental pension obligations and the other post-employment benefits lines. And again, those increased specifically because of those government accounting standards that we adopted during the year. Really, it's, I could bore you here for a few hours if you really want me to stick around that long. But what they did is the GASB standards defined exactly some of the assumptions that had to be used by actuaries when determining these values. So this had nothing to do with any changes that you made to any benefits that you offered or anything like that. It was just the rules of how to measure that liability changed. So again, very clear standards on interest rates that had to be used and different assumptions that underlie that calculation. So you can see that it did have a pretty drastic impact in specifically your OPEB. You're at $1.3 million. That should be the total that you're sitting there with. I don't anticipate GASB changing any other standards or any other reporting requirements there. If you want more information, like I said, this was a very fun year for us when we're drafting your financial statements, because each one of those lines now has probably 5 to 6 pages each of disclosures related to them. So it gives all the detail of exactly what the district offers and who's getting what and what employees are in what categories, in just a lot more detail that you can find in your financial statements for you. So then at the very last part there is where is the legal debt limit for the district and where are you at in relation to it. The debt limit as set forth by Wisconsin statutes is 10% of equalized value of all property in the district. So you can see your equalized value level there of $865 million-ish, and then that translates to about $86,586,000 that you could legally levy against or borrow against. The general obligation that you have out there that's subject to that cap, you're coming in at about 5.6%. So you're extremely under-leveraged or lower-leveraged. You're in a, that's a favorable position to be in. So again, if you do have any major capital items, big projects coming up, you do have some room there. You can meet with financial advisors that can tell you exactly how that would impact, how much you could borrow, and how that would then impact any other future bond ratings and whatnot there. That concludes my high-level review of summary here for you. Any questions or anything that I could describe a little bit more maybe?
So for the minimum unassigned fund balance, you would recommend 25%? Mm-hmm. Okay.
25% of general fund expenditures.
Correct. And we have 5% as in our policy. And we're currently at 16.3%, so we would not be within, if we changed it to 25%, we would have to, that would fall below our goal or have a deficiency, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think we should review policy 621. That should be on the agenda for next session to change that. I mean, I don't know what number to change it to.
Yeah, my
but
experience
5%
with
is
other
clearly too low.
districts, 5% is very low, but I tried to get a DPI average in the past, and they're reluctant to say what it is, but I've seen many districts in the 18 to 21%. The 25 to 33% sounds very healthy, very large compared to other districts I've experienced with. But if you short-term borrow, then there's some interest that's paid, but it's not a huge amount because of the low interest rates of short-term borrowing currently. And we do get close to our fund balance. The fund balance is used at different times during the year because we don't have the revenue except at certain times when tax revenue and state aid comes in for paying our bills and our payroll. So that's what the fund balance is used for. And it currently, actually, we just discussed it this week in the office, that it's pretty low right now, but there are revenues coming in to offset that. So I think it's something that's worthy of discussion. I appreciate Jonathan's insight on that. So it's certainly something we can look at.
Yeah, and I think it's worthy of discussion to change it, not, necessarily to the recommended 25%, but maybe to what's,
Yeah, I think it'd be a good idea to research
and what's
it.
more with the norm, so we have a.
5% seems like kind of a paperless tiger, or toothless
Yeah,
tiger, doesn't it?
yes.
Yeah, 5% is definitely lean, and to expand on that comment, yes, the sample size that I'm working with is 32 districts just in our region here. That does not, obviously, it's not fully representative of all 72 districts or more. Excuse me, there's more than that in the state. So
426.
426. Thank you. I was thinking counties. All right. So statewide, yes, that number would definitely drop down to 18 to 20% probably. Again, the reason that we put that number together is because, as you pointed out, DPI is very reluctant on saying what is the average for the state. So we're able to do that because of the number of school districts that we're involved with.
Is there a way to get some sort of report, obviously not through DPI, but just through other sources of similar valued or similar budget-sized school districts in the state?
Yeah,
so you're not throwing, I'm sure you have Eau Claire schools and whatnot into the mix of.
I'm pretty sure I can research and pull that information together with.
So we're comparing kind of apples
yes,
to apples?
because it's all available on DPI. You can look at every single district and.
Would that be
there?
Or at least their district websites as well.
Yeah,
Suggesting we review
I would
that
agree.
number, so we should increase it. I don't know.
It seems like it's kind of a worthless policy
Yeah.
just to be arbitrarily.
Well, where it really impacts is when we go out for bonds, when we need to borrow, and Jonathan can speak more to that, but I know with Trial's experience here too, we've had the highest bond rating that we can receive for our finances as we're at now. So,
unless we desegregate more, does that go into your bond rating too? The segregation of duties.
They probably are going to weigh that into your bond rating.
Has been, from what I recall.
But
It's not
a district your
qualifying
size,
factor, but it's also
Yeah.
we can't get better only because we're just small.
right? And due to your size, obviously, it'll be a mark against you, so to speak,
Yeah.
but it's not heavily weighted. I
Right.
guess that's the proper way of saying it.
I'd like to thank Jonathan, and he and his team have done a great job as an audit firm, worked with different firms in the past, and they're outstanding.
And again, and thank you to Twyla and her work too, because this is always easy stuff. So thank you. Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, next, land acquisition.
Yeah, two different things, and I left it general. Specifically, I just wanted to mention regarding the Jorgensen Field we had talked about, and I met with the City Finance Committee, and there were very diverse views that were discussed and some history that I learned about. At this time, I'd like to state that I'd like to withdraw the Jorgensen Field acquisition letter, the proposal after consulting with the city, because there's just too much history and devotion to that field as it is as city property. So if there's no objection, that's what I would recommend that we do at this. I'll contact the city and withdraw the letter of request. And regarding the other land acquisition.
Is there an objection?
Okay.
No. I would like, though, because I would like, and it doesn't have to be done this month or whatnot, but I would like us to explore, being that we're paying $1,000 a year plus some other things that aren't into that, to the city. I'd like to explore what it would cost, and maybe you could get some numbers, even ballparking, as we look at our long-term facilities usage to refix the softball fields that we have currently on our grounds, so that we're not spending that money. If we can wrap it up with our own people, they're already taking care of the fields. Just nobody's playing on them right now, so I don't know if there's a,
Yeah, we can look further into that. As far as softball usage and facilities, we've talked, our board met in our fall board retreat and started to discuss long-range facilities planning, and we're moving forward with that. This was one step to inquire, and I think it's pretty evident that the Softball Association in the city, who owns the property, is not interested in pursuing that at this time. So I will withdraw that letter of request, and we'll explore other options as we look at long-range facilities planning. The other land acquisition is we are now owners of 2 lots behind Slumberland. I call them the Hosking lots, and I see we closed Friday on these 2 lots, and we have a picture. Lots, if you can scroll up a little bit more. Oh, there we go. Lot 219 and 223 on this aerial map. This is a pretty neat mobile phone that Mr. Justin Hosking, who's here tonight, he sent this from his phone at the closing, and I was pretty amazed. We have a pile of rocks right on the line, and I talked with Josh Ganji, and he said, well, good, we'll keep those for landscaping, because I mentioned that Justin offered to remove those rocks if need be. But Josh is excited about getting the house building project started, and we do officially own those 2 lots now at this time.
and we did it for $1 like we were going to do with the softball field, right?
Actually, it was a remarkable price.
Yeah, I know.
To acquire the
I'm
land
teasing.
for it. So, thank you, Justin.
Great, yeah, thank you. This will be, is Mr. Ganji ready to roll on?
Oh, he's excited about getting going this spring and pouring concrete this summer. He's got things lined up already. He talked to me actually just today, I think it was, about using the school's loader and scraping away the topsoil and starting to prepare the lot. Maybe Mr. Durfler has a little more information?
I don't have more information than that. When you ask that question, it makes me chuckle because Mr. Ganji once said in a meeting that I was in attendance at, one of the 5 greatest things he did in his life was dig his own basement. So he's ready to roll.
Sean, I don't think that was true. It was actually the top 2.
Top two. And I don't know where his wife and kids fit in there, but you have to ask him.
Well, just to be clear, there is no basement in this house that he's building in the plan. It's just on a slab. That's a fact.
Great. Super. Next, Whitley.
Is there a legislative?
Oh, legislative update,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
sorry.
Jeez.
Okay, so I just want to mention that I sent a letter to to Senator Olson, Senator Bewley. We don't have a senator in District 10 until after tomorrow's election, and to Representative Jarko and Representative Quinn from our area, just to, let's see if I have the letter available. The letter was for support of, sorry, I don't have it ready.
It's all right.
Okay. I forgot what it was about because I wrote it over a week ago.
Was it support of the teacher?
Oh, yes, thank you. The Teacher Protection Act is what it's called. And the Teacher Protection Act actually would allow for teachers to suspend students directly from the classroom and without any administrative approval. And it's something that we discussed at our CISA PAC meeting with all superintendents, and it's something that I'm adamantly opposed to. I don't believe it would go through the proper chain of command, and it would give too much authority and remove authority from the school. And I guess that's where I stand on it. And so I sent a letter to our senators and representatives in the area in opposition.
I actually watched that. They had a public hearing last week.
They did.
It was, and I'm going to be wrong, so don't quote me. I'm just trying to remember. But something like 14 different advocacy groups in the state that were testified against this measure, and zero people testified in favor of it. Everything from student with a lot of disabilities and a lot of special education advocates that were against this.
In fact, every single advocacy group representing education, OSA and WASDA and special ed groups, is
WSB.
opposed to this Assembly Bill 693. And in addition to that, my letter, I wanted to mention proposed increases in sparsity aid and low revenue ceiling, which there is a proposal for a $300 increase in the low revenue ceiling and $100 each year until 2023, and that would not impact us for another 3 years. However, once the low revenue ceiling raises high enough, it would impact our school district. So after discussing it with Lisa Boyson, our financial aid for the district, once it would surpass $9,700, it's currently at $9,100 per student for the low revenue limit ceiling, then our district would be impacted by that. So again, Assembly Bill 693, we ask for legislators to oppose and also then to support proposed increases in sparsity aid and the low revenue limit ceiling. So that's...
On a positive note, I read WSB today. I don't know if you got it, if it was today or recently. There's a blue ribbon panel that's starting up this week.
Yep, last month I had mentioned the Blue Ribbon Commission, which is chaired by...
And it looked like there was some really good, thoughtful people that were on
February.
To talk about school financing and maybe redoing the way our state messes. Yeah. I know.
Don't even go there.
Trust me, I don't have a lot of faith either, but at least they're talking about it, which is what they've been doing for years. But I always have some faith in Senator Olson because I think he truly gets it. So.
Okay, is there anything else from board members maybe regarding legislative update?
Just that we should all remember to vote tomorrow.
True.
And although by the time this airs, it'll be, past the time to vote. So I guess
Those of us in this
spread the
room,
word.
well done.
To friends and family.
Good. And you're up.
Okay, so more on the legislature. So Thursday, I will be listening to policy debates on 13 proposed resolutions that have to do with hours of instruction, referendum restrictions, teacher certifications. Basically, I'll listen to the debates, and typically, I know you did this before me. I read through everything, and it appears that that I'm in alignment with whatever the Wisconsin School Board Association supports. So I'll be voting on the resolutions what I think are in the best interests of this school district, which typically align with what Wisconsin School Board suggests and recommends.
So I was actually on the committee that drafted these this
Okay.
year, which was interesting. So I'm in the front end of it. There was actually like 30 that were presented.
Yeah, I see there's...
And those are the ones that made it after several meetings in Stevens Point. But I tell you, I have a newer understanding to what this actually is, because I used to think, again, it was kind of a toothless tiger of things. But actually what these resolutions do and what the Policy and Resolutions Committee does is it actually gives direction to our lobbyists, to Dan Rossmiller and Chris, so that they, when they're in the state capitol and things come up, that they're able to look back at this and say, okay, here's what the school boards have said, and then they're able to present our case based upon what that policy and resolution is, as opposed to going back and saying, what do you think about this, or what do we think about this? They're actually able to draft their lobbying and their discussion with lawmakers based on what gets passed. So it's a little more, I don't know, worthwhile than what I used to give it credit for.
Yeah, and I noticed in the past couple of years, the proposed resolution, there is a lot of debate, and, you know, we make changes to the language and vote on the changes. Sometimes, you know, resolution will take a half hour of debate and argument, and then change one or two words, and then it's passed.
It was interesting, just a quick story. So one of the resolutions, and I don't remember if that one made it all the way through, it was dealing with open enrollment and the transfer of funds. So if student A goes into District B, and the student's money in their home district was more than the district that they were going into, the state aid, that actually the entire state aid would follow them. So I could be in a district that gets less state aid, but if I get a student from a neighboring district that gets more state aid, that kid is going to be worth more money to me than, well, obviously the districts that have high amounts of kids coming in, that's a big deal for them because they're able to get more money. But the argument from people like us was, you're going to start competing for kids. You know, that we should competing for them on a dollar basis, not on a what's best for them educational basis. And I sat actually next to a guy, and I don't remember what district he was from anymore, but he was on there, and he was one of the districts that had brought this forth, saying, well, you know, it's not right that the other districts get to keep all the money. And I'm like, yeah. So I don't think that one actually made it through.
I was going to say, I just
it's
looked
in the
through it,
initial
it's
ones.
not, it didn't
but
make it.
it's interesting. So now because apparently there's some work in the legislature that was starting to get some momentum on this. Well, now the school board the school board will be able to say, no, we're not for this. We're opposed to this because of the work of the Policy and Resolutions Committee. So I don't know. It was worthwhile, I guess. I probably won't do it again next year. Chelsea's the expert now. I'll send them your way. But I just couldn't say no. All right. So that was. You have more. I'm sorry.
Nope, that was it.
Hijacked you. All right. Genius Hour, Mr. Benson.
Okay, I can start to address. What we have done is we've held some meetings to discuss middle school Genius Hour and project-based learning center. So I know that there's been a group of teachers that have been researching, reporting back to the rest of the staff at the middle school. We're looking at some renovations in the instructional media center and looking at taking out the steps in the room. Mr. Benson, you want to talk a little more about the ideas we have for Genius Hour?
It's kind of like going back to the different directions that went when they put together Montessori rooms or AIM or the CT academies. As far as we're moving forward, we're looking at building up, renovating some of our old labs into more of the, for the Genius Hour stations. And the biggest part is taking the old media room. It's called the media room. That's the room right off of the middle school library that at one point I think was supposed to be a large group instructionary room where they have these tiered steps in there. And the steps are only about like 4 inches high, and there's no seating. And the room has never been used in 25 years. And it's become a storage place for junk, and then I keep saying, I gotta get this cleaned out, and then a couple months later, more stuff will come in. So we're really looking at saying we'd like to renovate that room and make it much more usable. So it would look similar to the other lab across the other side of the library. And so the project would be is taking out those cement steps because it makes the room unusable. And then to flatten that out and improve the lighting. And then that would enable us to come in and use that room for more of media sciences and that type of thing, so that the Genius Hour groups could go in there and use facilities. You talk a lot about like the maker spaces that we've been talking about. That's some of the places where some of that could go. So for our Genius Hour labs, we're looking at renovating that, and we're kind of working right now with some proposals George is getting a lot of bids on what it would take to take that down and to improve the walls. There would be some glass there so you could see in. And then we're taking a look at what some of the furniture would look like. So we're kind of right in the beginning stages.
Thank you, Mr. Benson.
Yeah.
So I just wanted the board to be aware of pursuing renovations for that area within our maintenance budget and potentially end of the year and as we look forward next summer.
Okay, any questions? Next, Ms. Whitley again.
I can help to
Yeah, I
address
was
that too.
gonna say,
Okay,
This is what you brought up last
Ms.
time.
Whitley talked
This
last
was
month about the school road name, and just to be clear, if we could, Cheryl, could we put a picture back up there, that bus garage picture? The road that we're talking about potentially naming, we have, as I see it, I guess, two options. We could, now we're not talking about Minneapolis Avenue. I know there was a letter in the paper, and gentleman, Mr. Zinn, called me about it, and he talked about Minneapolis and the meaning of that. But we're actually talking about the access road off of Minneapolis and then the other one off of Broadway. So we would have the option of naming the road, and this is all school. I met with the city and talked with them, and this is all school property, so it would be up to us to maybe start to have, I think it'd be a great idea to have a committee, have students involved, maybe talk about different names. There's been some names tossed out as possibilities, but would we want to have one name for the road that comes east and west off of Minneapolis and a separate name for the other road that goes north-south off of Broadway? Or would we want one road? And I remember somewhere along the way I was reading older information and they talked about Bluebird Lane, and I don't know if that was ever a name.
I
or
remember that. No.
If Bill were here, I forgot to ask Bill, but
Remember that?
was there ever something referred to as Bluebird Lake? Because we have all Bluebird buses.
Might have been when we
say,
had
bus.
before the
Vaguely,
schools, maybe. Yeah, I mean, it's...
So the picture you see here is the intermediate school to the right with the half circle of buses, and that road that extends from right to left, it extends past the middle school, which has the orange on it up there. That's the middle school, and so the road I'm talking about would be the one that continues that direction. And then at the intersection where you see on the left-hand side, there's a car at the stop sign, is the other road. So the question for the board is, would you want to consider having a committee maybe research it, call it a SPEAR committee or something to get buildings involved, get students involved, come up with different names? Would we want to name the east-west and north-south road Warrior Way, Amery Avenue, or whatever other names, Bluebird Lane, or Benson Street, and I don't know if you have...
You and Lombardi Avenue, you can go down in his, just like that.
Especially, I don't know.
Uh-huh.
Never mind, I'll leave Viking jokes. But anyway, so
I think a committee to explore all options, yeah. Sounds like a good way to start. Because it wouldn't be a mailing address, it would just, the mail
Well,
would
it could be, I
get here.
think, can it?
Yeah.
Well, the mailing address, and I talked with the city about this, and I can check with the post office. The post office, actually U.S. Postal Service, sets the addresses, and 555 is the address for the high school. 543 is the district office and intermediate, the intermediate school address. I don't know what the middle school address is. I think it's Mr. Benson.
501.
In care of Mr. Benson or something?
Yeah.
And then in care of Ms. Meyer for, is there a separate number?
469.
469, okay. And what's the middle school?
501.
501, okay. So those are all Minneapolis Avenue addresses, and I'm not even sure if the bus garage has a separate one, but I guess the Postal Service, UPS, and Fed Express, and all of the delivery services all seem to find their buildings. Anyway, I don't know if our post office address would change. But
Well,
we
that'd be
can-
work of the committee to figure all that stuff out, right? Yeah.
So we have a mascot committee already started. We could,
It would just be easy for
Watch 'em.
directions, you know.
Yeah, to turn off Broadway, and if we have a road sign, then turn on to, whatever the name of the road would be.
It's kind of a whole
Like to get to the
branding thing.
tennis courts, go past Warrior Way and keep going, and then you'll see them on your left.
I do like the branding idea a lot.
Yeah, it's kind of a, can you have both of them together as the same committee?
Sure, I love the idea.
Sure.
We had a marketing committee, we could put the mascot committee,
your
road
thing.
committee, call it a
Just
spirit
a thought,
committee.
that's one less meeting. Instead of going to 2, you can go to 1.
Yes.
I know how that's all important to all of us, so.
We love how you
Same
volunteered you for both of them.
Same concept.
Okay, so I just wanted to report on that discussion.
Great. All right. Let me see, where am I? I can look up here.
Calendar.
School calendar.
Okay, we have been working since sometime in October on school calendar. I've met with various people, our administrative team in particular, and we have a draft calendar. I'll just point out that last year, before we finalized the calendar, we surveyed staff, and there were about 30 to 35% in 3 different groups, so about a third. When we asked about spring break, were in favor of a spring break. About a third were in favor of never having spring break and ending the school year early, and about a third like spring break every other year. So our compromise in developing school calendar was, since there's no spring break this year, that we would have a spring break next year. And other points I'll point out in this calendar, we started school in August. Last year, 3 days, this year, 4 days, and next year would be a full week, so 5 days in August. And when I say start school, technically that is summer school, and those days and minutes do not count toward the instructional minutes of the school year. But it's worked out well. We've had our best attendance days, those 3 and 4 days of the school year. Many other school districts have followed suit and have gone with days in August and running summer school. We added in-service days, and there's 1 less student day and 2 more in-service days, so there is 1 more teacher work day that's added to this calendar from 187.5 to 188.5. And I did meet with all of our staff meetings today and in-service and mentioned that as well. However, our Wednesday in-service days, those hours for an hour and a half till 5 o'clock in the evenings were removed, so that would essentially, those were something added this year, but we wouldn't be looking at meeting all those times next year. There's a week-long spring break and 2 more days, with Christmas and New Year's being on a Tuesday. If you slide up on the calendar. There's a Middle Border Conference Ed Camp that the district did not attend this year. We did attend last year, and we're going back to that October 26th. And you can see the spring break up there. We at one point had spring break scheduled for the last week of March, but the 26th is large, what's it called?
That's solo ensemble.
Solo ensemble, okay.
State
Large,
solo ensemble.
okay.
And then regional solo ensemble is the 5th of March, so that week would be tough too.
Okay, so we moved it up a week, but then we heard the concern that there would be a lot of students missing practice leading up to solo ensemble, and it fits pretty well in the second week of March between between winter and spring seasons, the time of the year, timing for conferences and end of the trimester, end of the quarter. And so then we moved, there's a domino effect. We then moved parent-teacher conferences up a week. I think this is a very good schedule. It ends up ending June 5th. And seniors' last day, we had discussed quite at length, and that would be, at one point we had May 31st, but we adjusted that on Friday to make senior last day May 24th, providing that they have excellent attendance and are tremendously behaved, and Mr. Durfler.
Aren't they every year?
And Mr. Durfler approves.
So my proposal for February 5th is in the go?
No.
Just checking.
When we discussed senior last day, yeah, the principal proposal of February didn't go through the committee. So there you have it, the proposal for the school calendar for 18-19.
Well, I was part of that committee, and there is a couple concerns I have and something worth looking into. And coincidentally, today is Martin Luther King Day, and we didn't have school. And I did look at a lot of different surveys between employers from various resources, human resources surveys, and other surveys, and it appears that anywhere between 39 and 43% of employers observe and give Martin Luther King Day off. And 30 to 35% is President's Day. I think Martin Luther King Day is larger than President's Day in the bigger picture. And it looks like we do have the day January 18th off, but not Martin Luther King Day off. So, and I get that the 17th is the term start and end date, so it would make sense for teachers to be able to prepare. However, it's convenient for the teachers, but I'm not sure if it's convenient for a lot of parents. I had a lot of comments a couple years ago when it was the very similar calendar. Parents have to work on the Friday before Martin Luther King Day. And they have to find daycare for their kids because they have that day off. And then Monday, vice versa. They get the day off to spend their day with kids, but then the kids have to go to school. Not to mention, and what would really be, I guess, one of the most important factors today, because observance of this holiday is very, inconsistent, and a lot of schools observe it, a lot of schools don't. What I would like to do, and I did not have time to do, I did a brief survey by looking at attendance records, and I would like to look at attendance records of when we do have Martin Luther King Day, because I think a lot of families do use that as a holiday. And if a significant amount of students, or even more than the typical amount of students, are absent from that day, I think that that's not in the best judgment to have school on that day. That's why we observe, Good Friday, which isn't for religious purposes, is because most of the kids are going to be gone anyway, right? So I don't know if, I didn't have time to pull the attendance records. Actually, I didn't even know where to start to get that, but I guess I would want to look to see.
In a quick search, looking at
approving this.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I just did a quick search, and Martin Luther King Day is January 21st, 2019.
Yes.
So it would be a matter of moving one day from first to second semester and moving the day off school to the 21st. It would be a relatively easy change. I don't know as far as the number of days. And when we go through this, the admin team, we do count days. We try to balance first and second semester. I don't know how greatly that would impact.
I can't remember which semester was which. I don't have it.
Yeah, I don't think that would be a real big problem.
I got it.
Okay.
Term 1's 45 days. Term 2, which is that week in January, is 44. So first semester is 89. Term 3 is 43. Term 4 is 45. So if you moved, you would move it from 89, 88 to 88, 89.
Seems like it would be a relatively easy change. So 43 days third term, it would make it 42.
It's 45, 44, 43, 45 right now. If you move that term, then you would move it from, actually, you would move 90 to 87 is what you would do.
Yeah.
Is what you do. You'd have 3 more in the first semester, according to my math. I could be wrong.
Yeah, it'd be 88, yeah, 87.
Okay, yes, that's what it says. And if you wanted to see this, by all means, you certainly can. It's just my jottings.
So if the semester were moved one day, then the term, end of quarter 3, where is that? Looks like there should be an underline.
Yeah, it's the 17th.
Yeah, and there's 17.
Oh, I'm saying end of term 3.
Oh,
End of term 3 is March 29th.
March 20, oh, there it is, okay. I don't know if you would necessarily change that or not.
I would rather not. It's difficult for a transition. At least I can say that to the high school. I'm not sure how the other folks feel about it.
I guess then, if Chelsea's proposal is to move that date, we could put the triangle or the day off on the 21st, MLK, Martin Luther King Day, and end of the semester,
The 18th?
the 18th.
No, it's not a day off on the calendar, it's an in-service day.
Well, what I mean is a no-school day,
Oh, okay,
in-service
all right.
day.
I just wanted to make sure we weren't misunderstanding.
And we do have a proposed school for President's Day too, but that really wasn't as controversial. There really wasn't a lot less employers. The President's Day was about 1/3 of employers give it off, and just not as many schools observe that as Martin Luther King Day.
Now, does this change when we don't have the spring break?
What does what change?
The Martin Luther King Day off. Did
Well-
we have that off last year?
We have it
We
off.
had it this year.
Yeah, it happens to be off this year, although last year it was a Friday in service. It was a Friday because we came back from Milwaukee because of...
From what I remember, the not having spring break allowed us to get out in May as opposed to June. That's what that benefit is.
But we have spring break next year, so.
Yep, so it pushes it up. It's robbing it's like,
Yeah.
go here, go there, go there, go here. Just depends on where you take the days off, if you take them at the end of the year or if you take them in March. Not dying on that.
So I guess this is the calendar I'd like to propose with the board to consider moving the first semester end date, one day, and the teacher in service day from January 18th to the 21st to have Martin Luther King Day
So
off.
So the kids would be off on the 21st.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you good with that?
Yeah, yep.
I'll make that motion
Okay.
with those changes.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion on that? Any other changes? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There we go. You can go print it. All right, next up is our policies.
These three policies were actually brought up 2 months ago and not brought back last month, so they are here as a second reading, and they are the board committee, policy 185, tobacco use on school premises, which only added e-cigarettes to policy 831, and board powers and responsibilities 150, which would make that policy in compliance with the bidding and purchasing policies, which have already been updated this past fall or last spring when we met and updated?
Summer.
Months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I don't know, you want to take them all as a whole, or you want to take them individually?
I think we should go through them
Okay.
individually, just
Alrighty.
because I have some comments on a couple.
Okay, so we can start with 185.
Okay, I agree that the procedures for forming an advisory committee can be all deleted, but I also see that advisory committees shall abide by the state open meeting law is also deleted, and that's the second to the last. And I think that all committees shall comply with open meeting law, provide notice of the meeting, posting the time, date, place, subject matter, and anything under consideration. I think we would do that anyway, but I don't know why we would take that out.
Yeah, I think that was just something that was assumed with the rest of the previous policy, but it would be fine to leave that in.
Okay. Anybody else have any objections to that or change it? Okay. Anything else on that one?
Nope.
So I'll make the motion that we approve that policy with that line added back in.
Second.
I'll second. No.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next 831. That just added the e-cigarettes.
Yeah, and as for e-cigarettes, I'm not sure if we want to elaborate on that. I mean, if you look at the statutes, they, to tobacco means to chew or I mean, we could make it twice as long if we wanted to. Use of tobacco, meaning to chew or maintain any substance containing tobacco, includes smokeless tobacco in the mouth to derive the effects of tobacco, as well as all uses of tobacco, including cigars, cigarettes, pipe tobacco, chewing tobacco, snuff, and any other substance that contain tobacco, in addition to papers used to roll cigarettes and or smoking of electronic vapor or other substitute form of cigarettes, clove cigarettes, and any other lighted smoking devices for burning tobacco or any other substance. Now, I'm not saying we have to use all of that, but I think that if we want to.
You don't think e-cigarettes covers it?
Well, I think it does, but I mean, I think we could add a little bit more.
Well, before that, it states, that they shall, for a student to smoke or otherwise use tobacco products, which pretty much
Okay.
kind of covers.
Yeah, the reason this came up
everything.
is I was contacted by the Polk County Tobacco Coalition, and I forget the person's name, but she contacted me a couple of times over the spring and summer, and we had emailed back and forth. And what they're specifically addressing is the e-cigarettes that has come up. And I had indicated to her that tobacco products actually does cover the whole array, including e-cigarettes, but this was sort of a compromise to add.
Well, because e-cigarettes don't all have tobacco in them.
Yeah, they can have just
Okay, yeah,
flavored
they
stuff.
could be
And
just
we don't want
vapor
any of that, right?
flavor.
We
And
don't
I
want
would
any of that.
put smoking of electronic vapor or other substitute forms of cigarettes, maybe instead
I
of
see
just
what you're saying.
e-cigarettes.
That makes, because, yeah, that,
Because they say I'm vaping. I'm not
Yeah.
smoking. It's
that, I
not
think that's a good
e-cigarette.
idea. I like that idea. Well,
Okay. So I would change, yeah, just instead of including e-cigarettes, I would say include electronic vapor, in quotes, or other substitute forms of cigarettes.
yeah, that's a great idea.
Always an angle.
It's true.
That could be cigarette candies. Remember those?
So did you get that?
Yep. You'd have it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Am I aging myself?
No.
Those were my favorite.
You can put that in the paper.
No. My mom would be so proud.
Oh, jeepers. Yeah, we were all there.
Do you want read back? Or?
So do you want to, well, are you clear on what you got there, Cheryl, or?
Smoking of electronic vapor or any other substitute form of cigarettes.
Is that good?
Yep.
Okay. So can we get a motion to approve that policy with those changes?
I'll make that motion with those changes.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. And then we can move on to the next.
Board powers, 150.
Yeah.
Well, this
150.
one, yeah, this one I do agree with taking number 9 out, just because I think it's in the wrong policy number. It should probably be under purchasing or in the 600s instead of.
And that's where it
Board
was when we
powers.
changed. When
Okay.
this is what this is to align the two, because
Yep.
this all of a sudden made it different numbers and
All
different
right,
things.
that's my only comment.
Yep.
I think that it's.
Yep. As a matter of fact, I was the one that noticed that going through that one day. I'm like, whoa, that's just different than what we just passed like a month ago.
And that's why this one came up.
Yeah.
We've had some comments, though, on the amount, because when we went to 672, it went to 50,000, so I don't know if we should revisit that and align it with what this one is and say that 672 should be 15,000. I don't know that there was ever an issue that I could.
I think we pulled that, and to clear up any confusion, we pulled that off of a significant number of boards of policies that we researched around the state. Remember, and to clear up any confusion, it's not like somebody can just go and spend $50,000. This is all
Right.
The state statutes are very explicit in a bidding process and a budget process. What this really does is allow us not to have a second or a third meeting for something that's already been budgeted, but we still have to approve the bidding process, and we still, so it's, all we did was change to make it more consistent,
Yeah.
I think.
But did we change the?
We changed 15 to 50 only because I think we decided
Right.
that this thing had been done back in 1995.
Yep.
And prices have changed since then. So the intent of a $15,000 expenditure 20-some years ago, inflation-wise, $50,000 is not unrealistic. And again, we have complete oversight on everything anyway. Good grief, if a boiler goes out, you've just spent $50,000, and I think our intent is we don't want to have to go and have a new board meeting to fix a boiler when it's 35 degrees outside. Just go fix the boiler. Was by following the proper statutes and the proper state bidding process that we're all. And there's still a bill out in the state legislature that might negate the whole thing and rewrite its own way that we have to do purchasing and bidding. So when Keith and I were on that committee, we're like, all right, we're doing this work just to make it simpler because we had some of this referendum work going on and whatnot. And but with the understanding that everything that we did next week might have to just get thrown away because the state's going to trump us on it anyway. So that's my thought on it, my recollection. I don't know if I'm missing anything, but I think that's kind of how we did it.
To help clarify for Keith's question, policy 672 does state district administrator or his designee may is authorized to purchase any item or group of items in single transaction costing more than $5,000 but less than $50,000 upon the receipt of at least 3 written quotes or bids, and that's the bidding purchasing requirement policy 672.
Yeah.
Yep. So those were the changes made.
Yeah, we didn't pull this one out of our.
Yeah.
In September.
I just want to make sure, again, in the arena, to clarify that.
This was done based on best practices of boards all around the state, so.
Yeah.
All right. So, let me see, there was no change on that, right? Okay.
No.
Well, I'd make the motion that we accept this policy as it's written then, with those changes.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, open enrollment space, Mrs. Wesley, Mr. Cookta, who do we got?
Okay. So each year at this time, per state statute, I'm here to work with the board. You need to make a recommendation as far as open enrollment availability. In looking at the state superintendent's task force recommendations for caseload, I'm recommending that there are available spaces at all program levels and grade levels. I would like to clarify early childhood, however, and I am referring only to special ed, not regular ed. Early childhood program has 14 possible openings. We continue to do recruitment and evaluation of students. Right now we have openings. If that would change, I would go to the board and ask for that to be limited. But other than early childhood, I think we have available space.
Okay. That's different than some years, huh?
It is very different than some years.
Yeah, that's great.
Not that our enrollment is down, because it is not.
So we can just accept this report?
This is by state statute. In
Okay.
January, the board has to set limits.
Right, so we can, as it's written up here, is that how we would?
Yes.
Or it's written on our board book stuff? Okay. So I would make that recommendation that we accept those, or I would make the motion that we accept those recommendations for open enrollment and special ed.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. All right. What do we got next? That's it? Sure. So I would take a motion now to reconvene in closed session to consider employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility in order to take personnel action pursuant to Wisconsin Statutes 19.851C, and we will be discussing regarding a notice of claim, which is paragraphs E and F, along with paragraph C's pre-mentioned stuff. So could we take a motion to do that?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, we are in recess until we reconvene in a couple minutes when Mr. Mel